I entered into an arranged marriage with an alpha younger than me. On our very first day, he warned me not to get any funny ideas. I didn't bother arguing with such a childish kid and just accepted his distance. But later on, it became hard to say exactly who was catching feelings for whom. Richard, do you remember what you said back then? What did I say? He shot back, suddenly scooping me up into his arms and staring down at me. Did I say that I just love challenging authority? Being picked up so suddenly startled me, and I shot him a disgruntled look. Put me down. No. Why should I? Is there something wrong with holding the person I like? It didn't sound like there was anything wrong with that, strictly speaking. But I still felt it wasn't quite appropriate. You're being too immature. Richard's gaze dropped to my lips. He swallowed hard, his voice turning a bit husky. What good is being mature? What I want is you. I quickly blocked his approaching lips with my hand, unable to suppress a laugh. So you've got a sweet tongue now? No more calling me an old geezer? Richard's face flushed red, then went pale. His shifting expressions were actually pretty amusing. He lowered his head, burying his face against my waist, his voice muffled. Don't bring that up. We were joking around when his phone rang. Richard frowned but didn't let go. I patted his shoulder. Stop messing around and answer the phone. Richard reluctantly set me down and picked up the call. A moment later, he walked over and told me his friends were calling him out. I waved him off and he hurried away. About 2 hours later, I received a text from an unknown number. It was a photo and a single sentence. Sir, Richard's first love is back. Are you still going to hog that spot and not let go? This method of provocation was childish and laughable. I didn't feel offended in the slightest. Instead, I tapped on the photo to take a closer look. In the picture, Richard was smiling brightly at what looked like a very pretty young girl. The number sent another message. Richard likes young, pretty omegas. You're old and you're a beta. Don't waste his potential. Honestly, it was childish enough to be kind of cute. I set my phone down without a care and went back to work. The sender, likely seeing I hadn't reacted, started blowing up my phone. Mr. Liam, you saw it, so why aren't you replying? Lost your confidence. At your age, you should just stop struggling. Richard is still young. He can't possibly spend his whole life stuck with you. I'm giving you advice out of the kindness of my heart. Surely you aren't so old that you can't understand that? Sigh, young people are always so obsessive about these things. I realized that if I didn't reply, they'd probably keep going forever. So I opened the text box. Thank you for telling me this. Out of habit, I added a smiley face emoji. Sure enough, the text stopped. But I never expected that a sentence I considered perfectly normal would cause that young person to lose their cool. Elijah, the one sending the messages, nearly jumped out of his skin when he got my reply. Wait, what does Liam mean by that? Is he mocking me? His friend next to him leaned in to look. Keep your voice down. Don't let Richard hear you. Elijah shoved the phone out. The smiley face on the screen did look a bit goofy. Look at this. What does he mean? He's so polite, and that smiley face is even blushing. If he's not being sarcastic, does he want to hit on me? His friend rolled his eyes, looking completely done. Elijah, is there something wrong with your brain? No, really. Doesn't Liam like younger guys? What if he's taken a fancy to me now? You're delusional. After replying, I suddenly lost the will to work. I started thinking about my relationship with Richard. The fact that Richard and I were living together was entirely our parents' doing. The two families hit it off instantly, and the whole thing was decided without ever asking for our opinion. Richard's parents felt they finally had someone to rein him in, while my parents were worried about me living alone, afraid something might happen to me with no one the wiser. To be honest, I thought it was a fine arrangement. The partnership between our families was good for business development. Unfortunately, not everyone was satisfied. Richard was dead set against it. Chapter 2. The first time I went to his house with my parents for a visit, we walked right in on Richard throwing a tantrum. Why the hell do I have to live with that old geezer Liam? Did I sign up for a teacher or an ancestor to worship? I don't care, whoever wants to go can go, but I'm not going. This kid really knows how to hurt people with his words. I calmed my angry parents down and politely knocked on the door. It opened to reveal Richard, anger still written all over his face. Who are you? I'm Liam. The young alpha froze for a second and accidentally let a curse word slip. Then he stuttered a bit as he stepped aside. Please, come in. Thanks. Maybe he was embarrassed about getting caught badmouthing me. But Richard didn't say a word while the families talked. After the discussion that day, I didn't make a decision immediately. Instead, I asked Richard to meet up first. After the coffee and fruit tea were served, Richard looked impatient. What do you want? Spit it out. Do you want to live with me? That's the good thing about talking to young people, you don't have to beat around the bush. Even if you did, they probably wouldn't get it anyway. Richard sneered. Does what I think even matter? Who cares what I think? I care. I looked at him earnestly. That's why I'm asking. If you really don't want to, I'll make it clear to both our parents. Richard finally dropped the rebellious act and sat up straight. Huh, really? Won't you get in trouble? He really was a kind kid at heart. I smiled, stood up, and patted his head. It's fine. I'm older than you. I should take on a bit more responsibility. But in the end, we still moved in together. Richard's parents had heard from somewhere that he was getting serious about a girl from an average background. After that, there was no way they were letting him have his way anymore. This indirectly caused the friction between Richard and me. On our first night living together, Richard stood at the bedroom door clutching his blanket, glaring at me. Liar! I never should have trusted you. Let me tell you, don't even think about trying anything with me. Ever. I knew he wouldn't believe anything I said right then, so I just walked into the bedroom helplessly and closed the door. Okay. Got it. But I still felt a bit bad. So I opened the door again and asked kindly, do you want to grab a pillow? I don't think the guest room has one. No. All right. Don't wake up with a stiff neck. Good night. From that day on, Richard always eyed me warily, like he was afraid I'd pounce on him at any moment. I found it kind of amusing and couldn't help teasing him occasionally. Honestly, I never really agreed with using physical punishment or verbal abuse to raise children. So when dealing with Richard, I tried my best to stay gentle, understanding, and respectful. However, just when I had finally gotten Richard to open up a little to the point where I could even see him smile, he came home with a slap mark on his face. My chest tightened instantly. What happened? Who hit you? I reached out to touch his face, but he jerked away like a frightened animal. Don't touch me. He walked straight into his room and locked the door with a click. Soon, a harsh ringtone rang out from inside, followed by the sound of something being smashed against the floor. I knew I couldn't let him bottle this up alone, so I knocked gently on his door. Richard, can I come in for a second? If you don't want to talk right now, I'm coming in with the key. If you don't agree, smash something else to let me know. I waited a moment, but there was no sound from inside. I immediately opened the door with the spare key. Richard was lying on the bed with his back to the door. He didn't react when I entered. I'd just taken a few steps toward the bed when the phone, which had been thrown into the corner, started ringing again. The screen displayed "Old Man." I glanced at Richard's back, picked up the phone, and walked out to the balcony to answer it. Richard, if you dare go find that Omega again, I won't just send him out of the country. I'll make sure he can't even go to school. And you can get the hell out and sleep on the streets. A roar came from the other end of the line. Uncle, it's Liam. The other party obviously paused, his tone softening slightly. Oh, Liam, where is that brat Richard? Put him on. Is he trying to hide again? I have the phone. Uncle, I've thought about it for a long time, and I don't think I can continue mentoring Richard. Why? What kind of trouble did that brat cause now? I'm going to beat him to death. No, it's not that. It's because Richard is already excellent. He doesn't need me to teach him anymore. Excellent. He scoffed, full of disdain. If he were excellent, he wouldn't disobey his mother and me, insisting on hanging out with someone who's just trying to social climb. He doesn't listen at all. How is that excellent? I mean it. You've raised Richard to be a loyal, sincere, and passionate young man. That is excellent. All I can teach him is how to face setbacks and take responsibility for his choices. I think we should give him a chance to try, don't you? There was a long silence on the other end, followed by a heavy sigh. That kid has been a worry since he was little. Only someone with your temper could still praise him. Forget it, I'm done with it. Teach him however you want. Okay, don't worry. Leave it to me. I hung up and went back into the room. Richard was still in the same position. The room was dark and heavy. Was it a safe haven? Or a cage trapping him in? I sat down on the edge of the bed and gently stroked his head. That was rough. You must be tired. Richard didn't answer. He just buried his head deeper into the pillow. I tucked the blanket around him and said softly, the food is still warm. You can go eat whenever you're hungry. With that, I got up, left the room, and quietly closed the door. I knew that if I stayed any longer, Richard would feel even more humiliated if I heard his suppressed sobs. People of every age have the right to cry, at least. That's how I see it. I stayed up late in the living room handling some work. When Richard came downstairs, I was still typing away. I looked up and saw it was already 2 a.m. I shut my laptop, went into the kitchen, and quickly heated up the food. When I came out, Richard was already sitting obediently at the table. I set the food in front of him, but he didn't pick up his chopsticks right away. "You're not going to yell at me for eating in the middle of the night and causing trouble?" I couldn't help laughing. "Why would I yell? It's not a big deal. Around here, the only way to get scolded is if you complain that the housekeeper's cooking is too healthy, then you're a picky eater. Everything else doesn't matter." "Oh right. There actually is one thing I'll scold you for." "What?" Richard looked up. "If you don't finish this bowl of rice, I'll definitely call you a wasteful little brat." I looked him in the eye and said it seriously. The next second, we both burst out laughing. "Who do you think you're dealing with? I can definitely finish it." I patted his head again and said with satisfaction, "Is that so? Good job, Richard." Richard buried his head low, almost touching the bowl, but I still caught a glimpse of his ears turning bright red. This kid really is cute. Whether it's the way he's eating now, how he was eavesdropping behind the door earlier, or how carefully he crept downstairs so he wouldn't wake me up. Chapter 3. After we finished eating, I noticed the handprint on Richard's face still hadn't faded, so I pulled him over to the couch to put some ointment on it. As I applied it, I couldn't help but mutter a complaint. That was way too harsh. It must hurt like hell. I was just talking to myself, really? But to my surprise, Richard responded. "Yeah. It hurts." My heart instantly melted. My tone softened without me even realizing it, like I was coaxing a child. "It's okay. The ointment will make it feel better. Here, I'll blow on it." Richard finally cracked a smile, looking a little embarrassed. "Come on. I'm not a kid." He said that, but I clearly saw a tear roll down from the corner of his eye. I gently wiped it away. People often say that a person's most vulnerable moment isn't when they're naked, but when they can't stop that first tear from falling in front of someone else. In that moment, Richard had completely let his guard down. As for me, I felt something I couldn't quite put into words. I said I was going to mentor Richard, but the truth was, I was just too busy. On top of my regular work, I had to deal with endless social engagements. Sometimes, standing in a luxurious banquet hall surrounded by CEOs and celebrities, I felt like a solitary prisoner trapped in a much larger cage. One day, to help Richard expand his network, I took him to a gala. The moment we arrived, we were swarmed. I introduced Richard to everyone one by one, maintaining a polite smile until my face felt stiff. Halfway through the event, Richard suddenly announced loudly, "Hold on, I need to use the restroom." Everyone around us froze, then awkwardly stepped aside to make a path. But then Richard suddenly grabbed my hand. "Come with me." I was stunned, too, letting him drag me through the crowd. Took me a few steps to react. "Aren't you going to the restroom? This isn't the right way." Richard turned around and made a shushing gesture. "Shoo, keep it down. I'm breaking you out of here." "Huh." Before I could process it, he dragged me along, running all the way to the parking lot and into the car. Only after we had driven quite a distance did he ask, "Where do you want to go?" I shook my head, still not fully back to reality. "I'll decide then." He stepped on the gas. It wasn't until we reached the seaside that I finally asked, "Why did you bring me out here?" Richard turned his head, the sea breeze messing up his hair. "Because you looked unhappy." "Did I?" "Yeah. Your smile was uglier than a crying face." "But I hadn't finished introducing you to all the VIPs yet," I said, feeling a bit helpless. Richard just smiled, completely unconcerned. "I don't give a damn who they are. I just want you to be happy." "You're a maniac," I muttered, though the corners of my mouth relaxed on their own as I enjoyed the breeze. Richard found a reef rock to sit on and patted the spot next to him. "Come on, sit here. Sunrise is in 2 hours." I sat next to him on the beach, listening to the waves. Between the gala and the drive, it was already 3 a.m. I wasn't as young as Richard, and I was exhausted. Without realizing it, my head rested on his shoulder. I don't know how much time passed before Richard gently woke me up. "Liam, the sun's coming up." I didn't move. I kept leaning on his shoulder and just opened my eyes. No matter how many times I saw it, the magnificence of a sunrise was always breathtaking. "Happy birthday, Liam." Surprised, I turned my head to see Richard smiling at me. "What? Did you forget your own birthday?" It was true. I hadn't celebrated my birthday in years. Every birthday just meant getting a year older, nothing worth celebrating. "Congratulations on adding another fulfilling year to your life." Hearing him say that, I suddenly felt that maybe life wasn't about time running out, but about becoming richer. I rested my head back on his shoulder and smiled. "Well then, congratulations to me too." "Hey, Teacher Liam, shouldn't you thank me first?" "TSH Student Richard, don't be so petty." Humph, humph. I mimicked his huff. Then we both started laughing like idiots. My 30th birthday didn't seem so bad after all. That long-lost sense of rebellion and the feeling of being with Richard. It was all pretty nice. My thoughts snapped back to reality, and Richard's boundary-crossing moves from earlier floated back into my mind. Yesterday, on a whim, he came to pick me up from work. As luck would have it, an old friend I hadn't seen in ages had also come to visit. We hadn't been in touch much since I got married. Naturally, reuniting with an old friend meant chatting warmly for a bit. But Richard got angry for no apparent reason, standing there and staring daggers at my friend. In the end, I practically had to drag him into the car. As we left, I had to look back and apologize to my friend. I'm grabbing dinner with my little brother today. Let's catch up another time. Once we got home, he was all over me, nuzzling and hugging. So I had to remind him, Richard, don't forget what we agreed on in the beginning. To my surprise, that just fired him up even more. He scooped me up, his voice changing pitch. What did we say? That I love challenging your limits. If his friends hadn't suddenly called him away, I was actually afraid he'd follow through. That little lunatic. I rubbed the spot on my waist where he'd grabbed me, feeling a mix of exasperation and amusement. Youth really is full of fire. Chapter 4. When Richard came back, Elijah was in tow. Richard marched him right up to me, his hand clamping down on Elijah's head. Hey, apologize. Now. Totally confused, my instinct was to stop this roughhousing. What's going on? Richard. Let him go. Richard spat in Elijah's direction, looking furious. This is the kid who sent you those weird texts today. He should count himself lucky I didn't beat the crap out of him. The guy being held down grimaced and looked up, muttering under his breath. I only spoke the truth. What's the big deal? Richard went to kick him immediately, but I stopped him. Elijah dodged nimbly and looked at me, clearly reluctant. Sorry, Mr. Liam. I couldn't help but laugh. They were acting like total children. It's fine. It was just a few texts. Richard wasn't having it. He yelled at me. What do you mean just? He's trying to drive a wedge between us. Sidestepping that landmine, I pulled Richard down onto the couch and checked his forehead. Did you drink too much? Your face is flushed. Sit tight. I'll make you some hangover soup, or you'll be miserable tomorrow. Richard nuzzled my hand, looking completely content. Okay, thanks, Teacher Liam. When I turned around, I saw Elijah still standing there, looking pathetic and disgruntled. So I called out to him too. You sit down too. Have some soup before you go. He froze for a second, then dumbly sat down next to Richard. Walking out with the soup, I heard Richard lecturing Elijah. Listen, if my wife didn't have such a good temper, you'd be toast. If you spout nonsense again, I won't let you off. I set the bowls down and lightly rapped Richard on the head. All right, knock it off. Richard tilted his chin up, looking unconvinced. It's just a matter of time. I ignored him and signaled for them to drink up. After seeing Elijah out, I barely made it inside before Richard cornered me against the door before I could even change my shoes. Why did you touch his head earlier? It was just a friendly gesture between friends. What's wrong? What's wrong? Why does he get to be close to you too? I'm your student. Only I get that. He was getting worked up, so I had to place a hand on his chest to keep some distance between us. Richard, you need to understand. My kindness doesn't imply special treatment. Sensing my resistance, Richard took a half step back, his eyes slowly regaining some clarity. So, the way you treat me is the same way you treat everyone else? Of course. Haven't I taught you this? Don't mistake kindness for affection. You'll only end up getting hurt. He frowned, struggling to process that. When people can't figure something out, they tend to get agitated. Richard was doing exactly that, running his hands through his hair one second, digging his nails into his palms the next. I stood there watching him, feeling a pang of sympathy. Young people always get so hung up on love. It's pathetic, but also kind of cute. After a while, Richard cupped my face in his hands again. Can we just pretend tonight never happened? I won't get jealous like that again. Can we go back to how things were? I looked at him and said gently, You're really drunk. You need to sleep. He followed me to the bedroom like a good boy and lay down. But as I tucked him in, he whispered, You're so cruel. I smiled but didn't say anything. Sleep. Good night. Not responding, not engaging, that was the best way I knew how to handle this. The next morning, Richard's gaze was visibly awkward. It seemed he hadn't actually forgotten about last night. I pretended not to know anything and called him over. Come eat. Feeling okay. He sat down in silence, looking downcast. I ladled out a bowl of congee and handed it to him. This will make your stomach feel better. He stared at the kanji for a moment, then suddenly pushed it away, looking like he'd made up his mind. If you aren't doing this just for me, then don't do it at all. Is he throwing a tantrum? I took the bowl back, feigning regret. Well, I guess I'll have to eat this last bowl myself. He watched with puppy dog eyes as I took the bowl away, then lowered his gaze, looking wronged but trying to act tough. I almost laughed out loud. I handed the bowl back and ruffled his hair. All right, stop sulking. Eat up. If you don't like me touching other people, I'll be more careful. His face, which had been all gloom and doom a second ago, instantly lit up. Really? Yeah, of course. We're going to be living together for a long time. We need to be understanding and patient with each other. Clang. Richard slammed his spoon onto the table. You're only saying that so we can get along? Yes. Is there a problem? Richard clenched his fists and stood up. Liam, are you playing me? I looked at him, feigning innocence. You are playing me. Just because I'm young. You're messing with me on purpose. Watching me bounce between happy and sad like some idiot. You know damn well that I... HM? Know what? Richard shut his mouth abruptly, staring at me with a look that was part resentful, part wounded. Before I could say anything, he turned and stormed out the door. Left alone, I felt a headache coming on for the first time. Crap, I took it too far. I really pissed the kid off. Chapter 5. I actually left work on time for once, thinking I'd pick up some dessert to butter Richard up. But the moment I reached the building entrance, I let out a helpless sigh. Looks like I wouldn't get the chance to cheer him up today. That old friend from yesterday was standing right there, waiting for me. Liam, you're off early. I was just about to text you. I walked over with a smile. What a coincidence. Yeah, seems like we're still on the same wavelength. Hop in. Sitting in the private room at the restaurant, he ordered with practiced ease. He hadn't changed. He remembered exactly what I liked to eat. On a sudden impulse, I asked, does this place have dessert? Ethan looked at me in surprise. Sometimes, but I thought you didn't like sweets. The kid at home likes them. Ethan's expression turned cold instantly. Is that so? Add a dessert, then. Which dessert would you like? The server asked. Whatever. Seeming to realize his attitude was off, Ethan immediately put his considerate mask back on. He doesn't have any dietary restrictions or specific favorites, right? I'll just order something random then. I nodded with a smile. Ethan finally relaxed, his smile returning. That kid you mentioned, is it the one I saw yesterday? I nodded, pulling out my phone to check for messages from Richard. Radio silence all day. Looks like he was genuinely pissed. Ethan continued, Liam, I really thought you'd never get that close to anyone again. Why would you think that? I answered absently, debating internally whether I should reach out to Richard first. Because I chased you for so long, and you never said yes. His tone was complicated. Seeing someone else get close to the person I couldn't even get near, it honestly doesn't sit right with me. I finally looked up at him, but I couldn't tell if he was joking or serious. I sighed inwardly. I really did prefer simple-minded young people like Richard. I didn't have to waste energy guessing what a slick older operator was thinking. I was young back then and took love too seriously. Now that I'm older, my perspective has naturally changed. Then why not get a little closer to me? I couldn't help but laugh. I took a sip of tea to hide the mockery at the corner of my mouth. Aren't you married? That wouldn't be appropriate. Already divorced, he said. She was too young. I couldn't stand it. It's better with you. I don't have to try so hard, and there are benefits. I looked at him without speaking. To think the man who used to only chase the beauty of love could say something like that now. I didn't want to continue this conversation. Feeling annoyed, I planned to brush it off. Just then, my phone rang and saved me. Where are you? The sender was Richard. Seeing his name, I unconsciously relaxed. Eating dinner. Why? With who? That was a tricky question. I hesitated. Ethan took the opportunity to ask, who is it? Liam. The kid at home. Ha! Ethan scoffed, his social mask dropping completely. I pretended not to hear him and focused on replying, with a friend. The one from yesterday. Richard sent it as a statement, not a question. Lying would only make things worse right now, so I admitted it directly. Yeah, him. Wanna come eat with us? I ordered the dessert you like. I was planning to bring it back for you. A moment later, he replied, okay, I'm right next door. I'm coming over now. He was nearby just as I suspected. Good thing I didn't lie or he probably would have stormed in. My kid is coming over in a bit. You don't mind, do you? Liam, today Before Ethan could finish, The door was pushed open with a loud bang. That rude entrance definitely wasn't a waiter. I gave Ethan an apologetic smile. Sorry. He's young and impulsive. Please bear with him. Ethan forced a smile, while Richard, who had been so loud and aggressive before, sat quietly next to me. I seemed to be the only person at the table who was remotely comfortable. We finished the meal in near silence. I got up to use the restroom. When I came back, I heard Ethan's angry voice through the crack in the door. What makes you think you can beat me? I stopped, frowning. If I wanted to keep the peace with Ethan, now wasn't the time to go in. Because I'm young, because I love him, and because I'll do anything for him. Richard's voice drifted out. I couldn't help rubbing my forehead. It's good for young people to have drive, but a lack of experience makes it too easy to expose their weaknesses. Sure enough, Ethan laughed contemptuously. Youth fades and love disappears. And as for doing anything, do you think he needs that? Richard, Liam is 7 years older than you. Who knows how many people threw themselves at him before you came along? He didn't accept any of them. Do you really think you have the standing or the ability to make him play another game of love? Don't make me laugh, kid. You'll never be his first, and you won't be his only. Ethan was telling the truth. It was exactly what I wanted to tell Richard. It went quiet inside, and I felt a bit annoyed at Ethan for being so blunt. Richard was young and his parents were hands-off. Hearing something so harsh was bound to hurt him. I sighed and prepared to push the door open. Friend or not, I'd worked hard to make Richard somewhat normal. I couldn't let all that effort go to waste. Just as my hand touched the handle, Richard's voice rang out. True, I can't be his first, but I will definitely be his last, and his only one. Just you wait and see. His simple words carried an inexplicable determination. Now I really had a headache. Was he serious? I slowly pulled my hand back, hesitating about going in. Mr. Liam? A voice suddenly sounded from behind me, startling me so much I almost broke character. Elijah poked his head out, grinning. Sorry, did I scare you? I shook my head and smiled, but his gaze was subtly sizing me up. You're here for dinner, too, Mr. Liam? Yes, me too. I came with Richard, he said. That kid dragged us all here to welcome his first love back to the country. But then he disappeared to who knows where. The implication was so obvious he was still trying to drive a wedge between Richard and me. What is up with young people these days? Each one is more manipulative than the last. I rubbed the bridge of my nose wearily. I didn't expect him to take a step closer. Mr. Liam, Richard has someone else in his heart. He's not a good choice. But I'm different. I'm young too. I've got no baggage and I'm very obedient. I looked at him in surprise, finally realizing what he was after. Seeing that I didn't object, Elijah boldly tugged at my cuff. Why not choose me? Chapter 6. For the first time, I actually found myself thinking, save me. This was a total mess. Inside the room, two men were at each other's throats. Outside, this kid had bad intentions. Is middle-aged men being targeted the new trend this year? It was ridiculous. Elijah, what are you doing? Richard's voice sounded like a choir of angels as he appeared at the door of the private room. Instead of letting go, Elijah gripped my sleeve tighter. Richard, I remember you saying you didn't like Mr. Liam. Since you don't want him, I'll take your place. I don't have some one that got away. I won't run away from an engagement and I won't say nasty things to him. I'm much more suited to stand by his side than you are. Richard raised a brow, clearly doing his best to keep a lid on his rage. He clenched his fists and strode over to me. Just before his fist could connect with Elijah's face, I stopped him. Richard, stop it. Let's go home. Richard stared daggers at Elijah, who glared right back, refusing to back down. Ethan, meanwhile, leaned against the doorframe, watching the farce with a cold sneer. Richard, I won't say it a third time. Home. Richard finally stopped posturing and wrapped his arm around my waist to lead me out. I felt a pang of guilt, letting him get close like this. Maybe I never should have approached him with such a casual mindset in the beginning. Who would have thought I'd be dealing with drama like this at 30? In the car, Richard stared stubbornly out the window, refusing to acknowledge me. I looked at our hands, resting just inches apart. After hesitating for a long time, I finally covered his hand with mine. Still mad. The moment I touched him, he visibly stiffened. But quickly, he turned and buried his face in the crook of my neck. What right do I have to be mad? I patted his head to soothe him, but I didn't know what to say. I felt lost regarding our relationship. Seeing I wasn't speaking, Richard looked up at me, leaning in closer and closer. Since I can't have you, can I at least belong to you? Let me be your dog. I'll put the collar on myself and hand you the leash. I'll follow only you for the rest of my life. How about that? Suddenly, he kissed me. I responded with mixed emotions. Thank God the privacy partition was up. In that cramped space, only we knew the awkward intensity of the moment. He wiped the traces from the corner of his mouth, but a second later, he suddenly started crying. I like you so much. Why? He asked through his tears, as if asking himself or maybe asking me. I knew why. He was like an unfinished love letter tossed in the trash, created, but uncherished. If someone were willing to pick him up, smooth out the creases, and read the blurry handwriting, they would receive all that innate, misplaced love he had to give. But what I said was, because you haven't met anyone better yet. When you do, you won't think this way. Okay, I admit it. Maybe in some unguarded moment, or perhaps on my birthday, my heart really did flutter for Richard. But I knew that people in their 20s fall in love easily. He was young. He had so many choices, so much sincerity to give. I didn't dare gamble the second half of my life on so-called love. I was scared, but Richard wiped his tears and looked at me, enunciating every word. You are the best. I'm sure of it. I looked at him, speechless. I'd seen too many transactional relationships and hypocrisy among people my age. Faced with such sincere, open affection, even if I could fool myself, my heartbeat wouldn't lie to my brain. No matter the age, everyone has the right to feel that spark, at least that's what I believe. Unexpectedly, my advice didn't make Richard back off. Instead, it fired up his competitive streak. From that day on, every time our eyes met, his were full of determination. And he became incredibly clingy. Forget Elijah, even Ethan couldn't get within 10 feet of me under Richard's watch. To put it bluntly, he was like a guard dog protecting his bone, getting stronger and more territorial by the day. The result of him following me around all day was that at a cocktail party, a friend looked at Richard and laughed, saying to me, "That kid. You can tell you raised him." I looked over at Richard, who was acting somewhat composed nearby, and nodded with a smile, feeling a trace of unconscious pride. He does look the part on the outside, but you don't know, he's still a child at heart. My friend laughed even harder and teased, "Liam, looks like the old house is finally catching fire, huh?" I shook my head helplessly, took a sip of my drink, and didn't reply. What are you guys talking about? Richard walked over and naturally took the wine glass from my hand. Drinking again? What's wrong with having a couple of drinks? Liam, are you being kept on a tight leash? My friend teased. Richard's expression turned serious. He's had stomach issues lately. He can't drink. Oh, I thought maybe you two were planning for a baby and quitting alcohol. My friend drawled, joking. Richard blushed, looking a bit green around the edges. I hadn't seen him get flustered like that in a while, so I couldn't help joining my friend in teasing him. What baby? By the way, you probably don't know, but our Richard here used to swear he'd only marry a girl. He even has a one that got away. Before I could finish, Richard grabbed my sleeve and leaned in close to stop me. I told you I was just lying to them. I was just fighting with my parents. I was amused by his childishness, but then I heard my friend speak up. Speaking of the one that got away, Liam, I heard your first love is in town. You know, that foreigner. The one who ran all the way here for you back then. Remember? You came crying to me saying he was the love of your life. Of course I remembered, but was it really a good idea to bring this up in front of Richard? I didn't dare look at Richard's expression, so I just shot my friend a glare filled with blame. My friend chuckled and mouthed to me, "It's fine. Letting him get a little jealous helps heat things up." You're welcome. A little jealousy is fine. Sure, but ever since that last incident, Richard had been hypersensitive about this stuff. Too much vinegar ruins the dish. Chapter 7. On the way home, Richard gave me the silent treatment again, staring out the car window and refusing to look at me. This time, it was my turn to cautiously tug on his sleeve. Mad again. He yanked his sleeve back abruptly and didn't say a word. I patiently reached for his hand again. Stop being mad. I have nothing to do with him anymore, and we haven't been in touch for ages. Then what's he doing here? Maybe he's just here on vacation? And he just happened to choose the one place where you two have a history? Richard yanked his hand away again, his whole body practically screaming, "Don't touch me." I decided to play along with his logic. Yeah, why did he come here of all places? How about I call him and ask? I pretended to pull out my phone to dial, but Richard snatched it away. Liar. You said you didn't have his number anymore. He was finally looking me in the eye. I cupped his face and kissed the corner of his mouth. I'm not lying. I was just teasing you. Who told you not to look at me? He wasn't the same Richard who'd beam at the slightest bit of affection anymore. Even though his expression softened, He wasn't about to let me off the hook that easily. Liam, you're always playing with my feelings like this. It's too much. Too much again? Then do you want this too much person to give you another kiss? Yes. Richard leaned his face in but didn't initiate the kiss. I took the hint and kissed his cheek. After that, he turned his other cheek toward me. This side too. Laughing, I kissed it. Suddenly, my friend's words popped into my head. The old house is catching fire. If an old house catching fire means an older person falling passionately in love, then I'm afraid this old house has already burned down to the ground, ashes and all. I sighed. I didn't expect that in the end. I couldn't escape the cliché either. Hearing my sigh, Richard actually kissed me back. Why are you sighing? I said I'm not mad anymore. Okay? Don't be like this. You're not allowed to lose patience with me. I scratched him under the chin and answered softly. I haven't lost patience with you. You're so cute. How could I ever get impatient? Richard hugged me, his larger frame practically hanging off me. Really? But I'm still scared. Because you can affect my mood so easily, but I rarely hear you say you like me. You can always see through my little tests, but I never know if you've actually fallen for me. Liam, sometimes I wonder, do you treat other people this well when I'm not looking? He was like an anxious puppy spinning in circles, desperate for validation. I won't get impatient, and I won't treat anyone else as well as I treat you. Why? Because treating you well is a privilege reserved exclusively for my lover. Richard's eyes lit up instantly. What did you say I am? Say it again, please. He looked exactly like a puppy asking its owner to retell the story of how it was chosen. I said, I only treat my lover this well. Before I could finish, Richard rushed to kiss me. You said it. No takebacks. Liam, you can't shake me off now. Why would I want to shake him off? After all, I've been indulging him, soberly and deliberately, for this long, haven't I? Epilogue. Richard, I've never been a good person. I know that. I have a sharp tongue and I act on impulse. I'm used to the world revolving around me. My parents have worried themselves sick over my temper. They wanted me to meet rich heiresses, so I told them I liked girls from average families. They wanted me to learn from someone, so I called him an old geezer. I always used my youth as an excuse. I didn't want to change. Paranoid, impulsive, childish, reckless. I lived in a world where everyone had to walk on eggshells around me. Until Liam showed up. The first time we met, he walked right in on me bad-mouthing him. To be honest, I didn't feel guilty at the time. I just thought, why does this man look so fragile? It looks like one harsh word would make him cry. So, without realizing it, I stopped saying those things. And when my parents told me to play nice, I didn't argue. If I broke his heart, I wouldn't be able to pay the price. But later, I inevitably fell into Liam's trap of tenderness. And for the first time, I learned what fear was. He cared for me, took care of me, indulged me, spoiled me, and even coaxed me when I was upset. But I didn't know if he used to or currently does treat others this well. And that amazing personality of his, who was he with when he developed that? I didn't know. What could I do to become his one and only? I didn't know that either. Ethan was right. Everything I can do for Liam, someone else already did for him 7 years ago. But I still can't let it go. He said he cares about me. He said I could be his lover. Even though I'm always dizzy with love, sensitive and insecure, I will never let go, even if it kills me. Even if it means being his dog, I'm fine with that. If you enjoyed this story, remember to subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much.